Is there even a slight chance that Obama timed his press conference to interrupt Donald Trump's celebrity apprentice?
I hope so.
It was suspiciously amazing that at the very moment Black Ninja Gangster was taking care of bin Laden, douchebag Trump was like firing the Playmate of the Year.
It was
it just showed the contrast. I mean,
Yeah.
And honestly, if you had to bet your own money on the 2012 election, tell me you'd bet on the Republican at this point.
You tell me what personal income growth is in the 12 months before voting day, and I'll tell you to bet on.
Really, you think anybody in the Republican Party could beat him at this point?
I think if personal income growth in those 12 months is less than 1%, I think he's very vulnerable. I think that's just one of the things we know about the way the American people vote. And you don't want to go too long on this week. And I hope the words of your farewell editorial don't come back to haunt you. But this is a high week for presidents. They also have low weeks.
Right.
And they should always remember at the highs. I hope President Obama has the wisdom in the moment of the high to remember the lows come too.
But you wouldn't really argue with the basic premise of that, which is that when you talk about McCain saying he wouldn't have gone into Pakistan,
Right.
when you talk about Obama saying I would, and this method versus the other method, that one side plainly had it right and one side didn't.
But
Would you argue with that?
you know, snipers don't always get it right, though, Bill. And we have to remember that, you know, for all of the training and all of the experience that went into this operation that took out bin Laden, it could have all gone horribly wrong as well. We just can't bet on these sorts of operations time in and time out. And I'm with Jeremy on this, you know, that normalizing these sorts of operations as if they're somehow a substitute for actual foreign policy is highly dangerous.
No, not for
and
foreign
toxic
policy, but
and remember,
to our moral imagination.
And remember that President Obama added 80,000 additional hostages to Pakistani policy to the American presence in Afghanistan. That's one of the reasons. The reason that McCain said no to that question was because he was so worried about the Afghanistan war. And the more worried you are about the Afghanistan war, the more difficult it is. The more difficult it is to act against Pakistan.
He got the answer
and we are
wrong.
now all a lot more worried about Afghanistan.
There was
than we
a
were 2 years
test.
ago.
There was a question on the test, and somebody got it right, and somebody got it wrong. I mean, why can't we just get real about that? Somebody answered A, and somebody answered B, and A was right. And, you know, I mean, and come on, this was like our Entebbe, right? Wouldn't you say that? This was our...
I think it's bigger than Entebbe.
It was what?
Bigger than Entebbe, I would say.
But I mean, pulled off with the same expertise, and you know, it worked. We didn't even do. I don't think Obama even did anything that incited a backlash. Like, he didn't kill all his kids.
Right.
He could have killed the bin Laden kids, like they would in The Godfather, by saying.
And he was very calm. I think to David's point, though, I don't think he had any kind of bravura or bravado or swagger. He was like, we did this at my choosing. It was all in the pronouns, though. The pronouns were doing a lot of work that night. What I did, what I suggested, so...
Oh, and then he went on a bit of a victory lap, you know.
He gets the credit because if it had gone wrong, he would have got the blame. But let us not forget that it could have gone wrong, and Irshad is right. I think that people who are supporters of the president want to be very, very careful about taking this week as the baseline for what it's going to be on.
But David, why can't your kind of balanced, reflective thoughtfulness be the case for most Republicans while they're gloating in the downfall of some other guy like the Democrats, or how they think Obama's stupid and just incapable of being tough?
Because they're not Jewish.
I think it has to do with being Canadian, actually. I'm not.
Despite my idiotic character.
I put that in the hypothetical. I put that.
Don't
roll tape.
I said I hope you are not saying that, because that would be. That's why I didn't attribute the thought to you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have used the word idiotic, but I'm more with you on that point.
Right.
You know, so I was going to show this, but before the week passes, this is one reason. Can you get a shot of this? Yeah, this is the Weekly Standard from this week. This is one reason why magazines are going out of business, is because the lead time is too long. Yeah. Obviously, they wrote this and put this out. Show it again, because it's just so delicious. This obviously was put out right before Obama's raid. Leading from behind, yeah. There's Obama, hiding behind a sand dune with a camel. That's really what his thing is, isn't it?
But this is what but don't normalize this week, because Libya is looking ugly, and and Afghanistan is looking difficult, and there are a lot of problems ahead. And I don't think you need to gratuitously oppose a president or belittle him or describe him as an alien to say, you know, you've got some real worries about some of this.
But here's what William Crystal said in the editorial that accompanies this, a guy who always wrong about everything. He said, all the Republicans have to do is nominate a real leader, a workhorse, not a show horse, a steady hand, not a flip-flopper, a profile in courage, not in cleverness, a confident man or woman with strength and confidence in defense of liberty at home and abroad. Yeah, always trying to avoid the appearance of relevance here in the Weekly Standard.
It's like a not funny onion.
Yeah,
I mean, a little bit of it about
profiles and courage is plagiarism.
All right.
But Bill, just call him wrong and move on. Why give him, you know, why give him that much credit?
Because it felt good.
I know.
And because they
There
don't
you
relent.
go.
And
'Cause I
because
like
they
to
don't relent. And
Yeah.
because they don't relent and they gloat and...
That's politics, dude. That's politics.
Yeah, but that's not politics.
he's not a politician.
My side is wrong, your side is right, is politics. But when you get into demonizing other people and making them monsters, that's a different kind of thing. And don't forget, before this week's
I agree, and I would have
victory-
said that to Keith Olbermann, by the way, when, you know, he had
it.
his, you know, worst persons of the day or
get
night
you.
or whatever it was. I mean, he was
it's
just
a
as bad
joke.
as.
It was not just
it's
as bad.
Of course
stop
it was.
it.
Demonizing, caricaturing.
Okay, first of all, worst persons. I think we know that that's a joke. That we don't really think it's the worst
Right.
person in the world. It's called hyperbole. It's called satire.
Right.
But the point is, it's like sex. Everybody does it.
Right.
Everybody does it. So why the double standard in, you know, sort of pointing out that one side does it, but when the other side does it, that's just
I don't
a
think
joke.
there's
That's just
I don't
funny.
think there's hyperbole on the side of the folk I would say are the right-wingers who are demonizing people. That's not hyperbole. They actually believe it with religious fervor. They
My
believe
friend,
it.
I
They're
know
not
so
parroting.
many people on the left in this country who believe their own BS as well.
Oh, no question
they
about that.
completely dehumanize
not
people
denying
who
that.
No, you know what?
disagree with
No one
them.
is arguing that the
Right.
that the Democrats or the progressives or the liberals are perfect, and they
Right.
fall way short.
Right.
But you are professing something that I think is even more dangerous: false equivalency.
Bill,
Yes.
Glenn Beck and Keith Olbermann are not the same thing.
But
That one.
that's the wrong answer. So, I'll concede
both
to you.
fired.
I'll concede to you that it's true. that the kind of vitriol that President Obama encounters is worse than the vitriol that President Bush encountered. That's true. It's also true that what President Bush encountered was worse than what President Clinton encountered, and what President Clinton encountered was worse than what President George H.W. Bush.
Bush got worse than Clinton. Clinton got impeached.
We are on, in terms of the things.
No, seriously, how can you?
The things that I have a stare, Charlie, that the idea that the Iraq War was the work of a cabal of Jews inside the Bush administration. I don't mean what is said on television and the talkers and the ranters.
I never said that.
What I worry about is the normalization of paranoid theories in our politics, and that is worse in every cycle. It's true it's worse now than it was then. It was worse then than it was before, and it's getting worse
I
all the time.
fundamentally disagree with that. When Democrats get elected, Clinton and Obama, the last two, there is a view on a lot of people on the right that the election is just illegitimate from the get-go.
Right.
And that whatever we do to remove this person, whether it's birth certificate bullshit or finding him with Monica Lewinsky or Whitewater, is justified because we know what's right for this country, and therefore any way we can get him out is the right thing. And I do not think that happens on the other side.
Right.
As I said that it is not that you don't need to show that this is precisely the same as that to show that we have a problem. It was not just radio and TV talkers who put the cabal theory, the neocon theory. These were former national security advisors. These were former deputy directors of the CIA. These are some of the most esteemed people in the land. And these were professors at Harvard and the University of Chicago, and who put into American discourse some very poisonous things. I think birtherism terrorism is worse than that. I agree with that. But
Right.
that is not a pass for what was done before. And it is, I think, this revenge drama we've got, this Greek tragedy we've got, it will be worse next time than it is now unless people stand up to it.
Look, I agree with a lot of what you said, but here's the problem with me, is that when you talk about the cabal and the kind of anti-Semitic fervor that people introduce into the conversation, why can't you acknowledge that the stuff on Obama is the ape stuff and the black stuff and the witch doctor stuff is as vicious and as vitriolic an expression of
Read my site. I
racist,
write about it all. I write about it every week.
But I'm saying, but not
But I don't.
just
I mean,
on the
honestly,
fringe.
Dave, I don't remember a lot of this Jew stuff that you're talking about in the mainstream media. I just don't. I mean, I'm sure. Look, there's always people you can find, the fringe nutsos, who are
Right.
saying anything. But I mean, there was a lot of people who thought the Iraq War was a terrible idea, and that it was because Bush wanted to get revenge for what they did to his daddy, and a lot of other
Right.
dumb reasons to go to war. I don't remember.
You watch the BBC, the Panorama documentary, in which I was one of the people featured. This is the most watched TV network on the world, I think.
Do you think there's legitimate criticism of, because a lot of this comes down to this, people say, you know, is there any legitimate criticism that can be made of Israel and Israel's
This has got-
practices?
this
Let
has
me
got
finish.
nothing to do with
No,
Israel.
I'm saying Israel and Israel's practice, which argues, which is a substitute for a lot of conversation, the vicious anti-Semitism that you and I would both disagree with. But when we begin to talk about public policy and foreign policy and its relationship to the state of Israel, or in regard to people who happen to be Jewish intellectuals making certain arguments with which we disagree, is there any legitimate space to make those arguments without getting the tag or without being anti-Semitic?
Look, Israel's a whole other file.
I understand that, but I'm
What I
asking
was
about
talking
the
about,
relationship
what I was
between
talking
the
about
two.
was our politics and paranoid theories in our politics.
But they relate
birtherism-
to the state. They relate to the state of Israel. They relate to Jewish intellectuals. They relate.
I got one more question just from the
yeah.
internet, and
All right.
we're long on this, but it's such an interesting week. Do you think that Obama should not have released the photos as he did not, or do you think that, because that's a debate that's gone on all week, should he release the photo of the dead bin Laden?
I think the short answer is yes.
You do?
Yeah, because they exist and they will be released at some point. You might as well take ownership of them. There are conspiracy theorists all around the world, in Pakistan, the country that we talked about.
But they'll still say it was doctored. It won't
Yeah, but
touch it.
I mean, you know, there's, I just,
It would not inflame.
you know, it's a very tough decision. But I think these photos are going to come out anyway. And by the way, there were 79 people there. They took photos as well.
But for
And-
that very reason, it's good that I didn't release it. We know it's going to get released. We don't look like we're involved in trying to thumb our noses, so to speak, in the face of their horror.
But by the way, Bill, if Muslims are serious in claiming that bin Laden doesn't represent us and never represented us, then releasing those photos, no matter how badly he looks, is no reason to feel humiliated. So that's a good test for Muslims
What
as well.
if the photo comes out and Lindy England is next to him going this with the thumbs up? Would that
Or Manji.
inflaming you now?
Adolf Manj has to think about that.
All right, thank you everybody. We gotta go.
Speaking of time, so,
See you next
come
week.
and speak there, one must be silent, you know?